So for Christianity, it was religion. Jews killed God. Nazism, it was the race. Jews were the most inferior race. Today, it's human rights. Today, the world values human rights the most. Guess who's the worst violator of human rights in the world? The Jewish people.
Ever,
And
ever.
so
Jews in,
ever.
the Jews invented,
Yeah,
literally.
we invented human rights, but we're the worst, right? And there's psychological projection. They say we're committing genocide. Hamas is the one who's committing genocide and has it in their platform to do genocide. So anti-Semitism is full of these projections and psychological real psychoses, and it morphs in every generation successfully. So it's very creative. So today, for 50, 60 years after the Holocaust, it was like, how do I be an anti-Semite? I don't like Jews, but how do I be an anti-Semite? It's like there's no legitimate way because racism and Nazism and the Holocaust basically made it so bad to be an anti-Semite, you had to like leave it alone. But anti-Semitism has successfully morphed in the guise of human rights to be legitimate. I'm not against the Jews. I'm against the Jewish people. It's the state. I'm against the Jewish state. Israel. It's not that I'm against Jews. I'm not an anti-Semite, or I'm not an anti-Semite. I'm just against genocide. I'm just for human rights. I don't have a problem with the Jews. And so people don't even know they're being anti-Semites, but they are.
Hello, culminators. Good to see you again as the summer wanes. It is so nice to bring you a discussion that we're going to have with not my absolutely oldest ColemanNation friend, but a pretty old one. Not that he's all that old. In fact, he looks marvelous. Rabbi Raphael Shore, speaking to us from Israel. He is originally a Torontonian.
London, Ontario.
London, Ontario. As if there's any difference. It's all
Proud. I'm a proud the hockey players in small town Canada are much
the
better.
hockey players. He grew up in this like a small Canadian city of London and with his two brothers. His family had a modest connection to their Jewish and Zionist identities, but they were not observant. It was a little bit surprising when Rafal and his brother became deeply religious, moved to Jerusalem. Rafal was already a graduate or a student at the University of Toronto, ended up in Jerusalem. Long story short, Rafal became one of the people behind the phenomenal worldwide growth of the famous Aish HaTorah yeshiva and educational and outreach institution in Israel for many, many years, which is where I met him. Rafal subsequently founded the Clarion Project, an organization exposing radical Islamic threats to the West. He produced a documentary called Obsession, another one called The Third Jihad and Iranium. These three together over 150 million views at all kinds of awards. In 2009, he established Open Door Media. He's got so much going on. I've been a guest in his home. I have only the warmest recollections of my times with the Shores. And by the way, is there a book? Of course there's a book. Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? Learning to Love the Lessons of Jew Hatred. And I have a feeling that Rafael and I are going to be right on the same page on this topic, partially because almost everything I know about anti-Semitism, I learned either from him or from programs that he developed. I used to actually teach anti-Semitism, a seminar, roving the country from time to time anyway, on behalf of Aish HaTorah, reading from a script that I strongly suspect he wrote. And anyone who's familiar with my feed will recognize the themes here. So we're going to talk about the book. We're going to talk about what's going on in the world. We're going to talk about what's going on in Canada, which is of all these states of the Union, the one that many of us have the most concern for. They sometimes act like they're a different country. Rafal, how you doing? Good to see you.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's great to see you too. Good to be on your show.
It is a real pleasure, and it's really shame on me for taking so long to get to this point. You have been a rabbi and a teacher rabbi, not a congregational rabbi, filmmaker. Now you're an author. How do you think it would seem to me that your journey has been fairly coherent? These are not crazy. Like anyone who knows how you work and how Torah works understands that the idea is to grab onto any resource, any way of getting across whatever messages are necessary. But when did you decide that you were going to become a book author?
That was most recently.
Yeah.
It was actually film was more native to me. So I was studying film at University of Toronto even before I ended up coming to yeshiva. So that was kind of going to be my trajectory. It took me 20 years to come back to it because then I became a rabbi. I was working for Torah and Kiruv. Then we realized that we could use film for educational purposes. I think what happened was that I had
Kiruv, by the way,
six.
folks, Kiruv is Jewish outreach.
Jewish outreach. Okay.
Remember,
Know your
we're talking
audience. Know
we're
your
talking to the whole
audience.
wide world here, gazillions of people,
Oh
including
my
some
gosh, that's so
who do not
exciting.
know.
Okay, so um, the both companies that you mentioned, Clarion Project and Open Door Media, one of my greatest successes, and I think I learned it from Aisha Torah in the negative, which we'll expand upon if you feel you would like to, was the importance of the succession plan. And so I started early. So both Clarion Project and Open Door Media, I successfully brought in CEOs to take my place about 5 years ago. And in order to create a self-sustaining, self-managing company where I was less critical to it. So I stepped back from being CEO of both. And then, lo and behold, I had a little time on my hands, even though I was still very involved with both of them. I had a little more time. And then I went back to my passion, as you said, with the Why the Jews stuff, with the anti-Semitism was a passion since university days. So I came back and said, okay, now I've got a little time. Let's start writing.
I think it is where I think that we can have the discussion about succession without anyone getting toasted in any way. So, Rabbi Shore was among the organizational and educational and inspirational leaders at Aish Torah, which had been founded by the great Rabbi Noah Weinberg, and who was an absolute pioneer in the world of Jewish outreach. There is a very strong argument to be made that he invented it. I mean, he acknowledged obviously the role of others before him.
Hmm.
Uh,
Hmm.
he was a tremendous person, a tremendous teacher, an absolute revolutionary. Uh, and the only thing he wasn't great at, perhaps, there might have been a couple of things, but one of them was setting up a plan for management succession, which is not uncommon among many great men, actually. So, as Raphael knows, I found myself somehow a little bit in the mix until, by virtue of a succession of conflicts, I was able to get myself out of the mix. In other words, professional conflicts. I couldn't. A lot of everyone. My phone was ringing. Everyone wanted me at the same time, including the yeshiva. So I got myself out of it. But it was just like we learn to love the lessons from anti-Semitism. We learn to love the lessons from failures to adequately plan for succession, I suppose. Which is exactly what you just pointed out. That when you
Hmm.
set up these
Yeah.
organizations, you realize that you were a creator. Whatever it was you were not going to live forever, and that you also had other projects that you wanted to eventually work on.
Indeed. And the other thing was like Open Door Media is a company that I founded with the idea that you can use film and media to reach the entire generation, which essentially was Rev. Noah Weinberg's vision of we need to figure out ways to reach the entire generation to educate them about being Jewish. So even though I left Asia Torah in order to establish it, I was really doing Rabbi Weinberg's vision and using media today and all the various platforms. I mean, when I started Open Door Media with this vision, um, most of the platforms didn't exist that are so common today. But I knew film and media was I had an inkling, and thank God it was in the right direction. But it only made sense to hand over the reins to people younger than me because they understand it so much better. I'm now, early 60s. I hired a CEO who's actually from Passaic, New Jersey, who's around 40. And he's one of the older guys on the team. So we now have 65 people on the Open Door Media team. We are leading organization in terms of education about Israel and Jewish people and Yiddishkeit, Judaism on YouTube and podcasts and everything. And thank God it's only because we have a young team that we're able to do it. Open Door Media, because door is a play on words, that it's a door that you walk through, but it's also a generation in Hebrew is door. And so we are trying to teach and create an interest in Judaism in Israel to a generation that is very open, but they need to have open-minded educators to bring it to them. And so that's what Open Door Media does. And then, like you said, I did learn that lesson. So the name of the book is Learning to Love the Lessons of Anti-Semitism. We learn from the positive and negative in life. And I saw the challenge. Yes, that's us.
That is you. And we could probably spend an hour just talking about this, but because the book is out there, I want to talk
Yeah.
about the book, especially because the theme of the book is really important. The message of the book is really critical. How is it that we learn to love the lessons of such an unpleasant experience as anti-Semitism?
Yeah, the answer to that question to me gets more and more obvious as the insanity of the world becomes more and more obvious. There's the infatuation, the obsession with the Jewish people in Israel, the double standards that are so obvious and apparent to anybody who's got a little bit of a moral compass are so extreme, they make absolutely no sense. So, in other words, from the fact that the world is obsessed by us, from the fact that the world must create blood libels about us, and accusing us of genocide, the absurdity of the obscenity of it is evidence of the greatness of the Jewish people. Irrelevant people are ignored. The Jewish people are never ignored. We are so incredibly relevant. And so
Now,
the world proves it to us every single day.
I always remember among the many sort of one-liners, or this might have actually been a Monty Berger thing, is one of Rabbi Shore's colleagues and one of my teachers, a very, very talented outreach rabbi. He used to say, just to be honest, a very, very large percentage of the nations of the world consider themselves to be special in some way. Many of them quite explicitly consider themselves to be superior to all other nations and races, and nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Right.
China is the Middle Earth. Oh no, who cares? Who cares what the Chinese think?
Right.
But when someone suggests that the Jews think that they're better, which is in fact not really the point of what the chosen people means at all,
Right.
everyone, why does that bother everybody so much?
I mean, the answer is
Who is this book meant for?
you're
Is it
asking.
meant for Jewish
Well,
people?
well, the other thing that Moti Burgers, it's meant for Jewish people, but it's meant for everybody. Everybody could benefit from this
Well, I mean, we'd like
tremendously.
to see 4 billion sales, of course, but no, everybody could
Yes.
benefit from it, and I am recommending that everyone buy a copy.
Thank you. Yeah, no, it's completely relevant for two different reasons. But there is another line though that I'll tell you. You mentioned Rabbi Berger. Another line that he said that relates to this topic is that when evil comes to the world, it always finds the Jews. So again, it's evidence. Like, why is it that in every generation, whether it's Stalin, whether it's Hitler, whether it's the radical Islamists, why is it that they always find the Jew? Because evil finds good. And so the challenge is, and of course, in the book, what I do, and we can go into this later, but I just want your audience to understand that in the book, we go into Hitler's ideology. So it's not just we're inferring. You asked me how do we love these lessons, and I'm inferring from their obsession that they must find us very relevant and important, right? But in the book, we go into great length to understand Hitler's ideology because he understood that the Jewish people were the global spiritual superpower of the earth, and that's why he had to take us on. That's why he wanted to destroy us. And it was a more important
And
goal than
keep in
World
mind,
War II. And people don't know this, but this
and,
is Hitler's words.
and we have to remember, folks, when Rabbi Shore says this, what Hitler was saying was he was blaming the Jews not only for Marxism and of course for Judaism, but for Christianity, which he held in acute contempt.
Disdain.
Absolutely hated Christianity because it was soft, it was about love, it was about brotherhood, and that was antithetical to his very pagan worldview.
Yes. So we developed this in the book. So the reason it's relevant, the reason why this book is relevant for everybody, Jews and non-Jews, is for the Jews, if you are a young Jew today, religious, non-religious, you are under tremendous pressure against being Jewish, against association with Israel. Everybody wants you to say, yeah, I'm Jewish, but I don't really, I'm against what's going on in Israel, blah, blah, blah. In essence, there's a global pressure against the Jewish people, not only in Israel, but also every single Jew on the planet. And in order to defend ourselves against this, the first thing is to develop moral self-confidence. And in order to do that, you have to see the double standards. You have to see through the double standards. You have to see the lies of genocide, the blood libels of the calls of genocide, and the concern for Israel, Gaza, so much more than everywhere else. You have to see the double standards, see the anti-Semitism, and then be able to flip it on its head and say, wow, they're actually complimenting me as a Jew. They're obsessed with me, and they're obsessed with me not because I'm really bad, but actually because I'm part of an amazing people. That is developing inner strength that we all as Jews need today. And that's the importance of the book. For non-Jews, they need to get on the right side of history.
What's an amazing people? When you say an amazing people, there's a great deal of confusion about what are the Jews? Are they an ethnic group? Are they a religion? What does it mean to be a nation or a people? It is a category that confuses people and makes it difficult to have a lot of these kinds of conversations.
Well, one of the reasons it's so confusing is because the Jewish people always get fooled by the anti-Semites. In what way? We get fooled by thinking that the reason they say they hate us is the reason, when it's not. So, for example, the Christians hated us because we killed Jesus. If it wasn't that, there'd be another reason. The Nazis came along and said, no, it's not because of the religious reason. We hate you because you're a separate people. And so the Jewish people, as a response to that pressure in the 1700s, 1800s, where all of Europe was reforming and wanted to grant equal rights to the Jews on condition that we drop our nationality as Jews. We could only be Frenchmen that have a slightly different religion. That phenomena in modern history created a Jewish mindset that stands today, which is that Jews are a religion. And this really confuses American Jews because we think just like Christians are Americans with a certain set of beliefs, so also Jews in Judaism. But that's not the case at all. Judaism is an ethnicity. It's a people. We are a people, a nationality, in addition to having a set of beliefs and moral principles. So therefore, if somebody's a Christian and they say, I don't believe in Jesus anymore, are they a Christian? Nope, they're not a Christian anymore. If they're a Muslim and they say, I reject Muhammad, good luck to them. But if they do, they're not Muslims anymore. But a Jew says, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in Torah, I hate the Jewish people, any level of those things, he's still Jewish. Ethnically, he's still Jewish. It's not subject to the beliefs. And therefore, that's a very unique phenomena that is not properly appreciated. But as a
But how can you be,
people,
but can't a convert is a fully credited Jew for 99% of all purposes.
100%.
I mean, and they can't marry a member of the priestly, a male Cohen. I mean, they're for all practical purposes, they're religiously equivalent
Yes.
to it, but they could be black, they could be British. So
Hmm.
how can we say Jews are an ethnic group when you can become a Jew by converting?
Well, we're an ethnic spiritual group. And again, this is something that even Hitler identified. We're an ethnic spiritual group. So you can actually join, even though we are a specific people that descended from Abraham as the first Jew. So we are a family and we are a nation, we are an ethnicity, but we're also a spiritual family and we have spiritual genetics. And that, because we're outside of the physical world completely, conversion creates a spiritual transformation that allows someone who's outside the Jewish people to enter in and be 100% Jewish in the same way. And again, this is something that Hitler identified, which is why he said genocide was necessary. Because Hitler said even if one Jew did not have any education and didn't believe in anything, he will become the germ center for fresh sedition. He will bring those humanitarian ideas into the world that Hitler so loathed. He will bring the idea of God even into the world and brotherhood of all mankind and peace on earth. Those kind of humanitarian values that he stood against, he saw was inherent to every single Jew, irrespective of their education or beliefs. And so this is something, again, that I talk about in the book, the wild concept that somehow Judaism and Hitler have the same worldview in so many ways, except Hitler was evil. So he was choosing the flip side in history.
Don't you I think your book in and of itself answers the question, but it still from the outside presents the question of how is it possible for us to benefit from a victim status? It seems that one of the things you see anti-Semites going on about is, oh, it's another Holocaust. Everything is anti-Semitism. Oh, you criticize this Jewish politician. It's anti-Semitism. It's anti-Semitism. Why is looking through the view of people who have afflicted Jews a positive exercise? I mean, to some extent, you've answered it by saying that it's the obverse of reality, but it's a perfect mirror image. But if you could explain again the victimization as a positive.
Yeah, well, I think that your question is an excellent one. And I do believe that the Jewish people have become obsessed with anti-Semitism. And I think that's unfortunate. Which was interesting from the guy who has made 5 movies and written a book on anti-Semitism. But I think we derive the wrong lessons from it. It's not, everyone's trying to stop anti-Semitism. How we stop anti-Semitism is if we can do something. You stop anti-Semitism by the anti-Semites changing, not by the Jewish people changing. Anti-Semites have a problem. They have an issue. They have an issue with the Jewish people, which is a psychological problem. It's not our problem. We always go to thinking, oh, well, maybe if I become less Jewish, maybe if I don't associate with Israel, maybe if Israel disappears. We always come up with reasons that, oh, if I believe what they're saying, I'll become different and maybe they'll like me then. And it doesn't work. So the Jewish people, we need to not be so worried that there are so much is so much anti-Semitism in the world, and instead just let it bounce off of it and say, yeah, look, they're basically screaming from the rooftops, you Jewish people are the most special people on the planet, and that's why we're obsessed with you. That's how I see it. That's how I see it. Like, why does every generation want to wipe us out? There's no other people on the planet that in every
Well, so the
generation
anti-Sem so
somebody's
the
trying to wipe
anti-Semites
up.
love that though, right? They say they like to repeat this preposterous story about exiled from 119 countries, which is easily
Yeah,
debunked. But maybe it's those countries, or maybe it's you because everyone hates you. If
exactly,
everyone hates
exactly.
you,
So that is exactly the paradigm, and that every Jew needs to face. Either the Jewish people really are bad, and that's why 119 countries have kicked us out, and that's why the world is obsessed with us committing genocide today. And maybe we really are the worst country on the planet, and we are committing genocide. Or maybe you guys have a serious problem. And you anti-Semites have a real serious personality flaw that you need to go to some shrinks. You need to develop an ethical compass and figure out what life is about because you're on the wrong side. And therefore, if you look at it, and to me, obviously the Jewish people are not the worst people on the planet. Obviously, we're not conducting this war in the most inconsiderate, inhumane way. Everything's just the opposite. And so if you see it clearly, you can just get tremendous strength from the obsession instead of it pushing us down and getting us to think maybe we're the problem. However, to the extent that we don't see through it and we don't understand it, it bothers the Jewish people. We don't have the moral self-confidence to get over it and get strength from it. We get obsessed with how do we stop anti-Semitism, which is why there's 150 organizations and there's probably hundreds of millions of dollars for sure going into fighting anti-Semitism every year. And it's missing the point. Look, with hundreds of millions of dollars a year, anti-Semitism is going up. So it's not a very good investment.
so what would be a good investment with that $100 million?
Is to educate every single Jew on what is great about being Jewish, why it's a privilege to be a member of the most amazing people on earth who've had incredible heritage, who still belong to this most relevant people with this most relevant and deep, wise system of thinking, the Torah, and being part of an incredible, loving, caring family and part of a human experiment that's gone throughout all of history and is nearing the end. It's actually very exciting and very positive to be connected to the Jewish people and Israel today. And if we can educate the Jewish people that way, we will not only withstand all the pressures, it won't bother us as much, but we will also reduce anti-Semitism in the process.
One of the amazing things, you say you think that we're near the end. There is a sense of a sort of crack up in the making, and one of the ways I see that displayed most obviously in anti-Semitism, and everything you say, by the way, is reflected in my, I have a kind of a large X account, and I spend a lot of time dealing with anti-Semites, and people often say, well, why are you even bothering? And to which I respond that I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it for the hundreds of thousands of people who are interested in knowing how do I answer these things. But I'm sorry.
Damashatoshiv. How to
You have to
answer the
explain.
question.
You have to.
I'm saying what you're describing is a
You have to
principle
know
that's
how
in
to answer.
ethics
You
of
have
the
to know.
fathers to know how to answer the others, not because you're going to convince Not because someone who denies everything, but because you need to strengthen those who are in the middle and wondering.
So because of this activism, which is to a large extent a result of stuff I learned in Aish Torah and from you, uh, I often get very sympathetic messages from non-Jews say, "How do you put up with this? How do you take it?" And it's so funny because I have no idea what they're talking about. Like this is what I know as a student of Jewish history and as someone who learns Torah, that this is the natural state of things in the world. This is what I expect from evildoers. And my job is partially to deal with them. Different people have different roles in the world.
Hmm.
Sons are scholars. They're not on the forefront of the fight against anti-Semitism. But I have this ability to do this. Because I was trained to give the Why the Jews seminar. I have, and also because I'm a student of history, I'm and I do it, but it doesn't have the slightest, it doesn't
Well,
have the
this is exactly
slightest
my
negative
point.
effect on on my.
This is exactly my point, Ron. You have moral self-confidence. You have what I call inner armor. That is what we need every Jew to have. I'm the same way, Ron. I see these double standards, and it bothers me a little bit, but mostly because I know it's affecting negatively other people who don't see through it, and especially the Jews. And so I want people to have inner armor so that when they see it, they're like you and I. And that requires a mindset, that requires knowledge, that requires information, analysis. That's what we need to do with our hundreds of millions so that we can educate every Jew that they can have that strength through having enough education and mindset that allows them to just love being Jewish and understand that this is part of Jewish history. Understand why it says in the Passover Haggadah, in every generation they come to destroy us. And it's amazing, but they do. And it's because we are bringing into the world spiritual goodness that is resisted by evil. And in every generation it has evil, and they find us. And so we're part of this incredible experiment, and it's wonderful to be part of it.
One of the things also, besides one of the aspects of the crack up, actually, this is, I think, what I was going to say a second ago, is that an increasing trend I'm seeing in discourse on the internet is, well, you're not the real Jews. These aren't even the real
Right.
Jews.
Right.
Now, I understand from a sort of there is a one particular Christian theology that says that the real Israel is the church and the Jews. That okay, we can put that aside because although people are obsessed with what Jews believe, Jews are not obsessed with what other religions believe. And if that's what they want to believe, as long as they do the right thing, we're fine with that. But there is a tremendous amount of disinformation about who the Jews are ethnically and historically. And to me, the fact that they're lying about this, I mean, everyone throughout history has known who the Jews were. Like there's a contemporaneous record of everyone knowing exactly who the Jews were, having no trouble
Right.
finding us, identifying
Right.
us. And yet all of a sudden, people and, debunked theories of, but is that something, I mean, when we were first talking about this stuff decades ago, I don't think that was so much in the mix as it is now.
No, look, anti-Semitism is creative. It morphs. It morphs in every generation. And one of the things I talk about in the book, which is actually something Rabbi Sachs, alav shalom, the former chief rabbi of England, talks about a lot as well, is that whatever a society holds as the most important value, the Jewish people become the opposite. And that's how it successfully morphs from generation to generation. So for Christianity, it was religion. Jews killed God. Nazism, it was the race. Jews were the most inferior race. Today, it's human rights. Today, the world values human rights the most. Guess who's the worst violator of human rights in the world, the Jewish people.
Ever,
And
ever.
so
Jews in,
ever.
the Jews
Yeah,
invented, literally.
we invented human rights, but we're the worst, right? And there's psychological projection. They say we're committing genocide. Hamas is the one who's committing genocide and has it in their platform to do genocide. So anti-Semitism is full of these projections and psychological real psychoses, and it morphs in every generation successfully. So it's very creative. So today, for 50, 60 years after the Holocaust, it was like, how do I be an anti-Semite? I don't like Jews, but how do I be an anti-Semite? It's like there's no legitimate way because racism and Nazism and the Holocaust basically made it so bad to be an anti-Semite, you had to like leave it alone. But anti-Semitism has successfully morphed in the guise of human rights to be legitimate. I'm not against the Jews. I'm against the Jewish people. It's the state. I'm against the Jewish state. Israel. It's not that I'm against Jews. I'm not an anti-Semite, or I'm not an anti-Semite. I'm just against genocide. I'm just for human rights. I don't have a problem with the Jews. And so people don't even know they're being anti-Semites, but they are.
I mean, does anyone who says that really believe it? You really think that you say that they don't know it? Is it
Yeah,
really?
I think that the huge majority of people who say, I don't have a problem with the Jews, I just don't like Israel, or I don't hate Jews, I just am for human rights. I think that 80 to 90% of them are legitimately stupid and don't realize that they're being real and that they are really anti-Semites, and that's what's underneath it. And the reason is because, especially for not the non-leaders in this, because if you go on a college campus today, 80, 90% of the kids on campus are going to say something just like that because they've been brainwashed and to believe that. And because social media is so powerful, because misinformation is so strong today, so that a young person on campus, a young non-Jewish person on campus who's liberal and cares about the downtrodden, is being literally brainwashed by all their feeds into thinking exactly this. So is it deep down anti-Semitism or is it just stupidity? And I have to say that for the non-leaders, it's stupidity. And I always say that. I always say, well, listen, if you think Jews are committing genocide, there is a choice here. You're either an anti-Semite or you're stupid. Which do you want to be? But those are only two choices.
What do you think I mean, unsurprisingly, you'd like to see more Jews learning more about their heritage, learning more about their relationship with God. We haven't spoken about God. We haven't talked about God.
Which is a good sections of the book talk about it too. Yes.
So tell me what the book has to say about God.
Well, the flip side of anti-Semitism which is the first half of the book deals with what we've been talking about, which is that from anti-Semitism, from Adolf Hitler and other anti-Semites, you can realize that they are actually saying about the Jews that you are a very special people. You've changed humanity. You've changed the course of humanity with your philosophy of ethical monotheism and humanitarianism. You've transformed the world. And as a result, you've been hated because the resistance to that is called anti-Semitism. The resistance, just like the body and soul in every human being, the body resists the soul. The body resists the higher pursuits, the ethical pursuits. It wants to be free of the spiritual and the ethical. So it's the same thing in every human being, and it's the same thing in society and civilization as a whole. So the Jewish people have been that soul of humanity that has been resisted by the body, and evil fights the Jews. So that's the first half of the book. The second half of the book is that, in fact, it mirrors the Jewish idea, and that when God told the Jewish people at Mount Sinai that you were going to be this people that we're going to bring light into the world, you were going to transform the world with this mission and these ethical ideas, God said at the same time, you will be hated for it. And this started even before Mount Sinai, where the play on words is that Sinai, Sin'ah, came into the world. At Mount Sinai, hatred of the Jews came in the world. It's a play on the
Tina
same word.
is the Hebrew word for hatred.
Yes.
You know
And
that.
yes, I sometimes don't explain it properly. Um, but even before that, when Abraham was selected by God at the Bris Bein Habesarim, the covenant between the pieces. See why I don't translate the covenant between the pieces.
Especially
So
between the pieces the pieces of the sides of beef.
yes. So at the covenant of peace, when God chose Abraham for the very first time, he said, let me show you a picture of what's going to happen in history. Not only did he say explicitly, your children are going to go to Egypt and be afflicted for hundreds of years, but he showed him a picture of all of Jewish history and all the suffering and all of the persecution under four different regimes throughout history. And so, in other words, it's part of the mission of the Jewish people were given by God at Mount Sinai. Part of it was going to be this suffering. And I explain it in the book from the two sides of it. One side of it, and this is deep stuff, so you got to read the book to understand it in some detail because it doesn't do justice to say it quickly. One side of it, it has to do with helping the Jewish people be a more spiritual people through suffering. The idea of Judaism of Yisurim is something that God gives people challenges in life to help them grow. And also litzaref es adam, to refine their character and actually for the Jewish people to become less physical and more spiritual. Suffering and anti-Semitism plays that role. In addition, and this is something a little more relatable that people can understand, is that when the Jewish people choose to disappear from the stage of human history, well, that's not going to happen because God said we need the Jewish people in history to do the job. But he also gave free will. So what does God do when the Jewish people en masse say, thanks God, really appreciate the job, but we're out. We're out. Too much suffering, too much responsibility. We're out. And that has happened a number of times in human history. So there again, the Jewish principle that's brought through Tanakh and in the Talmud is that the response is anti-Semitism. In other words, the non-Jews will come to the Jew and say, you think you're one of us, you think you're German, you think you're French, you think you're American, you're actually Jewish. You're not like us. You actually are different. And then through suffering and persecution, anti-Semitism, unfortunately, sometimes it's needed as a wake up, and it's a tool that God put into creation. So those aspects are again, require much more explanation, and I discuss them in depth in the book.
So since this will probably be uploaded to the internet, just about, maybe I'll make it my business before Rosh Hashanah. For Jewish people watching this, what do you think? Is there any way they can take what we've talked about and use it as a tool for making their Rosh Hashanah more meaningful? Is that a perfect?
Yeah, I think
Wow.
it's a great question.
It's like such a question. Yeah, I mean,
It's a great question. I'll try to do justice to it.
thank you.
The yeah, Rosh Hashanah is the time every year where we are supposed to reflect on what we're doing in life. Now, what we're doing in life and evaluating if we are doing what we're supposed to be doing in life has to do with what is our purpose in life. So and that's a lifetime pursuit to figure out what your purpose in life. But as a Jew, one of our purposes in life is to be part of the mission of the Jewish people. And the mission of the Jewish people has been quite forgotten in this generation. And essentially what we're talking about and what we talk about in the book and what anti-Semitism is all about helps us get an understanding on this is the mission of the Jewish people. From Abraham, from Sinai, we were tasked with a mission of bringing light into the world, light and spirituality, ethical monotheism, etc. every Jew in every generation has a mission, has a purpose to assist that mission from taking place. Now, every Jew has, there's also particular, talents and everything that everybody has that informs them on what their particular purpose is. But as a member of the Jewish people, part of what we're supposed to be thinking about on Rosh Hashanah is, am I am I part of the Jewish people? What am I doing to help the Jewish people? What am I doing to help the Jewish people's mission come to fruition? And as we said before earlier, there's a lot of signs that indicate that we're in the home stretch and things are actually going in a very positive way, despite the pain and suffering that we experience. Ultimately, there's a lot of reasons as a Jew to be very optimistic about the situation today.
That I think is pretty helpful. I think that's pretty useful. And I think there is time to get the book. I'll make it my business. Okay. We won't put this on the evening before Rosh Hashanah because Jewish people are not going to be on the internet then. But here's the book, Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Jew? Excellent social, social realism art there. Uh, they're the bad guys down at the bottom. I love the woke pink-haired chick. She is. It's really something to see how the political far left and not so far
Mhm.
left becomes have moved 180 degrees on this topic. Raphael Shore, we could
Right.
talk for hours, obviously, and have done so in the past. Thank you so much for joining us. Everyone,
My
buy the book.
pleasure.
And there's so much going on. Follow Rabbi Shore, who not so long ago became an ex-participant, so he'll tell you if there's anything really going on that you should know about in this field. And have a good one. Thanks so much
Thank you
for
so
calling in.
much. Thanks, Ron. It's been great to talk to you.
Please give my regards to all those who shelter under the wings of your roof.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day.